Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Gene Kim, founder, IT Revolution.
Good morning. Hey, thank you so much for being here. I'm so delighted that we've gathered here so many people who believe that DevOps is important, that we believe that DevOps creates genuine business value and helps advance societal goals, and it makes technology work more humane. And this is not just based on a belief. On the next slide, on the State of DevOps report slide, one of the professional achievements that I'm most proud of is being associated with the State of DevOps report. So this is work that we did with Jez Humboldt, Dr. Nicole Forsgren. For 4 years, we worked with Puppet to understand what factors predict performance. And we know that high performers are massively outperforming their non-high-performing peers. And this research continues in 2018, this time with Google Cloud. So we know that high performers, they're doing 46 times more frequent deployments. They can complete those deployments 440 times more quickly. They have far better deployment outcomes. They have 5 times higher change success rates. And they can fix issues when bad things occur 100 times faster. On the next slide, we know that because high performers integrate information security objectives into every stage of daily work, they spend 1/2 the amount of time remediating security issues. And so, as a population, for 4 years in a row, we call this IT performance. On the next slide, I think what really brings us here is not just IT performance, but the fact that, on the next slide, 2 times more likely to exceed organizational and mission goals. Next slide, if I can only do this. It's not just about IT performance, it's also about organizational performance. We now know that high performers, they're twice as likely to achieve profitability, market share, and productivity goals. And this year, for the first time, we actually had a separate path in the survey for not-for-profit organizations, for military organizations, for government agencies, and we found the same multiple of performance there. Those high performers are twice as likely to achieve organizational and mission goals. And so I think what this shows very decisively is if mission achievement is reliant upon the work that we do every day, DevOps helps with the achievement of those. Another marker of organizational performance is that high performers, employees, are twice as likely to recommend their organizations as a great place to work to their colleagues and peers. And so not only does DevOps help organizations, it also makes for happier employees. And in this age where we're all fighting for talent, this is so important. So I helped co-author a book called The Phoenix Project in 2013. And one of my most favorite lines in that book comes from Eric, the Yoda-like character. And he says he wanted to improve the lives of 1 million IT workers in the next 5 years. And I think this has really become my area of passion, which is helping understand how can we use these DevOps principles and patterns and use them not just in the Googles, Amazons, Microsofts, Facebooks, and Netflixes, but in large, complex organizations that have been around for decades or even centuries. And the reason why I believe that's so important is that I think that's where the majority of economic value and societal good will be created. Not in the FANGs, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Googles, but instead in the largest brands in every industry vertical across every government agency. And so that's what led to us creating the DevOps Enterprise Summit, the first one in 2014. And the goal was really to show that DevOps is possible in traditional enterprises. And our main goal in that conference in 2014 was to collect experience reports to show that it is possible. Another thing that experience reports are great at is helping negate objections, to show that it is possible in financial services, whether we're a telco, even in classified military programs. And we use that to collect experience reports from technology leaders who are doing this under conditions of incredibly conservative organizations and that are regulated. In fact, just so you know, in 2014, among the programming committee, we had this phrase. We said, this conference is not for the unicorns, despite the fact that we have many friends in the unicorns. Instead, this was supposed to be a conference for horses, by the horses. And so over the next several years, we relied heavily on the experience report format. And I think the reason why experience reports serve us so well is that as leaders, as adult learners, we tend to learn not through people telling us what to do or what people think we should do. Instead, we learn better by hearing what other people in similar situations, what they did. And so the goal was to collect experience reports across the broadest population of industries, company sizes, profit or not-for-profit. And the experience report format follows this form, and you'll be hearing a lot of these today, which is, here is the organization that I'm part of. Here is the industry that we compete in. Here's the business problem that we set out to solve. Here's where we started and why. Here's what we did. Here were the outcomes that resulted, and here are the challenges that still remain. And so by doing that, I think this is how we teach each other how to make DevOps initiatives work. One of the things that we did in 2014 and continues to this year is we also have every speaker share, here's what we still don't know how to do, and here's the help that we're looking for. And I think what makes this so magical is that we're actually helping each other by bringing to us, the biggest obstacles and challenges that still remain. And from that, we've been able to create essentially a research roadmap that says, here are the challenges that we want to understand better how to overcome, and we use that to inform more the next year's programming. So the problem statements often look like this, whether it's leadership and culture, organizational design, metrics, architectural and technical practices, automated testing, information security and compliance. And we are bringing, so that's what we've done over the last several years. This year, here is what we are focused on. In DevOps Enterprise 2018, not only is our goal to collect great experience reports, but also to collect repeat experience reports. In other words, we have leaders who have been presenting in the United States for 5 years in a row. Here in London, we've had speakers who are speaking for the 3rd time in a row. And for me, this is so wonderful because we are almost like documentary filmmakers, following people in their journey and seeing what happened. And it has been my observation that the people who are driving DevOps transformations are succeeding. Just a rough computation says that almost a half of people who have presented at DevOps Enterprise have been promoted, often more than once. And I think this is because it shows that these people are creating genuine value that's recognized by their organizations, that they are winning in the battles of fighting very powerful incumbent systems, and that they're being asked to solve even larger problems. So this year, among the people who are presenting repeat experience reports are Jonathan Fletcher, CTO of Hiscox, Dr. Topa Radapal from Capital One, Mika Dienan from the UWV Netherlands, Tom Clark, Head of Common Platforms at ITV. So that's one area of focus for DevOps Enterprise 2018. The second one is an elevated focus on next-generation operations and infrastructure. To sum this up, Jason Cox, one of our programming committee members, for 5 years in a row, he said, this was a wonderful conference, really great for developers, not as good for operations. And so this has happened now 4 years. This time I promised him that we're going to do something very decisive about it. So we actually created a separate programming committee just focused on operations and infrastructure leadership issues. We dedicated at least 20% of the programming for these topics, and I think it's going to be reflected in the program. And my goal is, at the end of this conference, Jason Cox, for the first time, will say, great conference for developers, but even better for operations. So hopefully, this will be your reaction as well. Another thing that we are looking at this year is spanning the business and technology divide. I think increasingly as technology leaders get elevated in their organizations, the constraints and obstacles that they face are not between dev and ops. Increasingly it is in the organizations, in the product management, project management, funding regimes. And so this year we have a bunch of talks that show how business and technology can really work together to help their organizations win in the marketplace. This includes talks from Verizon Enterprise, Nike EMEA, Capital One, and the first talk, Chris Hill from Jaguar Land Rover. And again, we'll be seeking out subject matter experts from those domains that we are asking for their expertise on. I think the two communities that DevOps has drawn upon the most from include the lean community and safety culture, transformational leadership. And so we've sought out the best experts in those fields, and they will also be presenting here at DevOps Enterprise 2018. So the first thing I want to thank and acknowledge the help from the program committee members. Oops. So this is where each year we design what the programming committee objectives are, the program objectives are. That gets translated into how we allocate talks, and then we use all of our networks to try to find the best experts to help us learn, those things that we want to learn. So I really want to acknowledge all of their help. One of the other things I very much appreciate about the program committee is that all of these program committee members are semi-professional conference goers. And I think we've all seen what makes great conferences really, really great, and what conferences make it not so great. And I think we all know how it feels when you're at a conference, and there are people and experts that you want to talk to, but you can't reach them. They're on the other side of a invisible or sometimes a visible velvet rope. Sometimes you feel surrounded by people that you think you should have a lot in common with, but somehow you can't find those people to talk to. And yet you know that somewhere in the room is someone that is finding the same problems that you are facing. And so this was actually one of our goals for DevOps Enterprise 2018, which is how to help all conference delegates achieve their goals. And to help make that happen, I asked a friend of mine for help and to co-host this event. His name is Jeff Gallimore. He is co-founder and partner at Accela and a longtime friend of the DevOps Enterprise community. So Jeff, please come on out and describe what we're doing.
Thanks, Gene. I have been to all of the DevOps Enterprise Summits in the US and now here at the summit in the UK. And from what I've experienced at all of those summits, that this DevOps Enterprise community, you're my community. I love you. You are awesome. And so this role that Gene has given me to help improve the attendee experience is really meaningful to me. Now, Gene and the programming committee have put together an amazing lineup of speakers who will blow your mind with what they've done and what they know. You will definitely get some incredible insights and ideas from their talks. But those talks are primarily one-way shares from the speaker to you all, the audience. And we all know that we can get a ton of value from two-way sharing. And we want to create opportunities for those kinds of interactions between you and the speakers and between you and each other. So let me run through some of those opportunities that we have in store for you over the next couple of days. So first off, we have Slack. This is brand new for this year. Many of us use Slack in our daily work, and we're experimenting with using it at the summit for the same things, the same kinds of things that we use it for in our day jobs. And we also intend for the DevOps Enterprise Slack workspace to live on after the event, so the interactions that we have at the event and the relationships that we've built here can continue. We also have the Summit mobile app. Many of you have probably downloaded that already and have that on your phones. And so that we're all clear on what to use the app for versus what to use Slack for, use the app for schedule and session feedback, and use Slack for what Slack is really good for, and that's interactions. Now, another opportunity, we're bringing back the Ask the Speaker sessions, which were a big hit from last year. Those are speakers. And that's a session. There we go. All right. We have a panel each day with all of the plenary speakers from the morning talks up here on this stage. Now, plenary, just for those of you that didn't know like me, plenary just means they're up here in the morning each day talking. Now, we're also going to use Slack for these Ask the Speaker sessions. So get into Slack, get onboarded, and then post your questions in the Ask the Speaker channel in Slack. Tag the speaker with the question that you're asking. And then upvote the ones that you want to hear most answered. Any emoji will do, but I will tell you that my personal favorite is the upvote party parrot. I added that custom emoji last week, so it's available for everybody's use. Now, knowing this crowd, there will be no shortage of questions. So you may not get your question answered in that session. Now, since the questions are also in Slack, that means that not only the speakers can engage after the fact, but all of us can engage in sharing our thoughts and helping to answer the questions from our fellow attendees. Now, to hear about another great opportunity to learn from your fellow attendees, let's get Domenica DeGrandis up here to talk about lean coffee.
Hello, everyone. A common complaint that we hear all the time is that meetings are boring and unproductive. Well, the Lean Coffee format aims to do something about that. With Lean Coffee, people gather around a table, they propose and vote on topics that matter to them, and the conversations begin in a time box fashion. This is our third year doing Lean Coffee here at the DevOps Enterprise Summit. And the feedback that we get is that these are some of the most rewarding interactions that people have at the conference. So our speakers facilitate this. Next slide, please. So this is a picture from last year's Lean Coffee here in London. And you can see Cornelia Davis is leading the conversation. Lean Coffee works because the participants are in charge of the agenda, and everyone's voice is heard. It's a way to hear what's going on from other leaders in the industry and a way to have your voice heard also. There's going to be 2 Lean Coffee sessions. The first one is today, starting at 2:20 to 3:20. And the second one will be tomorrow afternoon, starting at 2:35 and running to 3:35. Both of them will be held in the Riverview area, which is right upstairs from us along the bank of windows. There will be some round tables reserved for Lean Coffee. So all you really need to do is just show up, take a seat at the table, and introduce yourself. Next slide. So here's some examples of some of the topics that will be discussed. When you see, these will be sort of like icebreaker topics to get us going, and then participants will propose their own topics and vote on them. So we hope you join us. Thank you.
Thanks, Domenica. Now, another opportunity, if you didn't get your question answered during the Ask the Speaker session, you'll have another opportunity at lunch each day. Many of the speakers have agreed to make themselves available for more discussion over lunch. Now, we only have space for about 200 attendees, so it's first come, first served. Now, the speakers love answering your questions. I've talked to a lot of them. This is one of the things that they really, really enjoy. But they also like eating. So, if your plate is empty and their plate is still full because they have been talking the whole time, maybe take note of that and carry the conversation for a little while so they can get the calories that they need to keep doing what they do. Now, for those of you who aren't eating with the speakers, we have something else for you at lunch. We've printed out topics with a handful of discussion questions to spur conversation, and we've put those printouts on the tables at lunch. So this will all be happening upstairs in the Riverview floor. Now, how many people are here who aren't with somebody else from their organization?
Timer's not running.
There's no time.
Okay, so that's about a quarter to a third. So here's the situation that you may find yourself in. You're at lunch, you have your plate filled with food in hand, and you're trying to figure out where you ought to eat. So let me give you a suggestion. Pick a table with some open space at it, walk up and say, "Could I join you? What are you talking about?" And if you're alone at a table and somebody joins you, say, "Welcome. Which of these topics is most interesting to you?" We're all part of the same tribe, so this should be really easy, right? And because we're all part of the same tribe, we should also treat each other well. We want everybody to have an amazing time here at the summit, and our code of conduct reflects that. We've posted the code of conduct in Slack, but let me give you the basic gist of it. Listen well when someone else is sharing. Share well when you have something to say. Respect everyone at all times. And speak up if you see something or hear something that isn't consistent with the way that we want the environment for this community to be. If you have any issues, email IT Revolution or direct message at MVK in Slack. So I'll let you in on something. At MVK is the Slack handle for Marguerite Kim, who is the IT Revolution CEO and Gene's wife. I have seen Marguerite in action. If there is something that needs to be handled, she will handle it. Now, I'd like to enlist all of you to get your support in creating a harassment-free experience for everyone here. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. Turn to the person next to you and shake their hand. All right. Now turn to the person on the other side of you and shake their hand. Now we're agreed. Brilliant. I heard that was the common European way of doing an agreement. I learned that last night. So let's cover some other logistics. Hey, be safe out there. Keep your stuff with you. Listen to anything that's said over the PA system. And if you have any concerns, contact hotel staff. They'll have the little name badges on their jackets, or someone from IT Revolution. Now, you'll know IT Revolution staff by their badges because it will say IT Revolution on it, and they'll have a black staff ribbon underneath their badge. They will also have black lanyards instead of the red ones that all the rest of us have. We also have Wi-Fi. Now, I don't know if you realize how much it actually costs to have Wi-Fi set up for an event this large. It is a staggering amount. In fact, it's one of the highest cost items for a conference like this. Now, because of that, it is fantastic that our Wi-Fi sponsor, RBS, is a bank. Thank you so much to them for keeping us connected to each other and to the outside world. Now, unlike this community's capacity to learn, our Wi-Fi's capacity is limited. So in consideration of, your fellow attendees' ability to tweet, text, Slack, and surf, please limit your usage to 2 devices. And, hey, you're here in person, so don't live stream the event. Now I'd like to introduce or hand it off to Gene to introduce our premium partner.
So it takes more than just great programming to make an event like this happen. To make an event this big work requires help from sponsors. So I'm extremely grateful to ZB Labs, who is our premium sponsor. Derek Langone, CEO of ZB Labs, please come on out. I understand that you have some news to share.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, you knew it was coming. This is the vendor pitch. You ready? I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, I'd love to start with a couple of thank yous. Number one, to Gene Kim and the IT Revolution team for putting on such a great event. And then to my own ZBA Labs marketing team. I can tell you that both of these groups have really been working around the clock to make sure this event is successful as it can possibly be. So, ZBA Labs just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So if you can believe it, we've been helping large enterprises achieve DevOps success since 2008. So we're quite a constant in the market. However, a lot changes from day to day. So we created the periodic table of DevOps.
Yeah.
So if you don't know ZBA Labs, probably you've seen our periodic table. And I'm happy to report this is version 3 that we just released today, which includes 52 new products that weren't in the previous version. So that reflects the kind of current state of DevOps tooling. Everyone receives a small little magnet inside their swag bag of the periodic table. And if you come by our booth later, we're giving away poster-sized versions that you can bring home, hang up on the wall, and use as a point of reference. So the DevOps Enterprise Summits, really my favorite shows in the industry. And the reason for that is they are really oriented around the practitioners. So I'm going to give everyone 4 action items for the next couple of days. Number 1, learn as much as you can. If you take the time to attend the sessions, network with your peers, visit the vendors, you will absolutely leave here with valuable advice that you can use when you get back to your offices. Number 2, enjoy the food. It's always fabulous. Number 3, have fun. You're in London. The weather is absolutely beautiful. You've got 2 days away from the office. Enjoy yourselves. And number 4, please come to the ZB Labs booth later so we can teach you how to do enterprise DevOps for real. And with that, I'll hand back to Gene and Jeff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, sir. We have other sponsors. So we'd like to thank our platinum sponsors, BMC, CA, Electric Cloud, GitHub, Red Hat, Sonatype, and TaskTop. Thanks to our amazing gold sponsors and our wonderful silver sponsors. And finally, thank you to all of our media sponsors for helping get the word out about this amazing DevOps enterprise community. Now, those thank yous to our sponsors are really genuine. This event doesn't happen without their support and their involvement. They are a big part of this community, too. So give them some love. Go talk to them in the expo hall next door. Now, if you need help or you have questions about the summit, post in the Summit Help channel in Slack. You can email help@itrevolution.com. And if all else fails, God help you if you have to come talk to me, but you can direct message me. I'm at Jay Gallimore in Slack too. So that's it. Have an amazing time over the next 2 days at the summit in London this year. And Gene, let me hand it back off to you so you can introduce this year's first speaker.
Very good. Hey, by the way, thank you, Jeff. All right, so I have the privilege of introducing every one of our plenary speakers. The first speaker today is Chris Hill. He is head of systems engineering at Jaguar Land Rover. So I met Chris Hill in 2016 in my hometown, which is in Portland, Oregon. And that's when I learned that Jaguar Land Rover actually has a team of developers in Portland, Oregon. And that Chris has been on a multi-year journey to help improve the state of software delivery around the infotainment systems that span over 75 models of Jaguar Land Rover that has been deployed into 750,000 cars in the marketplace. And it turns out that he attended DevOps Enterprise Summit in 2016 and had made some exciting progress since then. But that is nothing compared to what he's been up to since. He's now found himself near the center of one of the most strategic programs in the history of the company. And it has something to do with the car that is parked right outside of this theater. Incidentally, the car alarm actually went off a couple of times over the last 24 hours. So thank you for taking care of that, Chris. So he is here to tell us about this exciting journey. So please welcome Chris Hill, Head of Systems Engineering, Infotainment, Jaguar Land Rover.
Technology inside the new I-Pace. At the heart of the cabin is the sleek and minimalist dual-screen Touch Pro Duo interface. Everything you need is at your fingertips. An unrivaled audio experience, climate features, even driving modes and vehicle dynamic setups. With the Connect Pro pack, you can create a 4G Wi-Fi hotspot, providing connectivity for up to 8 devices at a time. It also provides enhanced navigation functionality, including door-to-door route planning, search for public charge points, real-time traffic, satellite view, and the ability to share your estimated time of arrival. Software over the air enables software updates to be sent directly to the vehicle without having to visit the retailer. The remote app lets you interact with the I-Pace via your smartphone, allowing you to control charging, access range information, lock or unlock, see your last parked location, and find your way back to it with on-foot directions. Compatibility with personal assistant devices will allow you to speak to your vehicle from the comfort of your own home. With the smartphone pack, you can share your Android or Apple smartphone screen, allowing vehicle-optimized apps to be controlled through the vehicle's touchscreen. Navigation Pro comprises an integrated real-time navigation system, incorporating features specific to electric vehicles, such as accurate range estimations, low power alerts, and charge station location and routing. Smart Settings works with the intelligent key fob to allow the vehicle to automatically recognize the approaching driver and configure itself to their preferences, including seat position, climate settings, and call list contacts. Jaguar's second-generation advanced head-up display helps keep your focus on the road, with crystal clear information and prompts projected onto the windscreen. The all-new Jaguar I-Pace. Jaguar electrifies.
All right, thank you for that. This is actually my 4th DevOps Enterprise Summit, and for some reason, Gene keeps inviting me back, so thanks, Gene. So that video actually described our I-Pace, and the I-Pace that you saw there in the foyer is actually our first battery electric vehicle. With our battery electric vehicle, we actually launched that next month. And can I get the slides on here, please? I'm really excited to talk about not only the I-Pace, but DevOps and the DevOps methodologies that we've been following within infotainment, which is that center screen that you saw there right on the vehicle. And the reason I'm so excited is this gives me an opportunity to reflect not only on where we started, but how far we've come and how much more we have to go. With a quick show of hands, how many of you have built a software product before? Okay, I made it to the right room. That's helpful. How many of those products are built for an embedded device? If you could raise your hands again. And leave your hands up if those products worry about user distraction in your user interface. Only a few of you. You guys are actually all hired. Come see me after the talk, and I'll sort you out. I'm just kidding. I am being serious. These are some of the constraints that we put on developing for an infotainment system. You have to worry about these things every single day. Now, an infotainment system is really your technology experience in the vehicle. Historically, our vehicles have been about your driving experience. And just as you guys may know, as the technology of autonomous driving and as our cars get more modern, technology becomes the main focus, and it will become more about your technology experience over time. I'm going to walk you through our journey of adopting a DevOps methodology for infotainment. But before I get started with that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are as a business. Go to the next screen. There we go. We're roughly 40,000 employees globally. We make approximately 24 billion pounds a year in revenue, and we sold 604,000 vehicles last year. We have about 5,000 software personnel, and out of those 604,000 vehicles that we sold last year, the infotainment system is one of 40 embedded devices that we have in each vehicle. They all talk to each other on a vehicle network in real time. Now, what you saw in the video and you saw in the foyer is our first battery electric vehicle. We've never done this before. The car goes from 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. It has a range of 298 miles, and the car looks sexy. What I've come to realize is that Dev and Ops isn't always so sexy. The people are sexy, don't get me wrong. But the idea that we are transforming or causing a change within our enterprise takes hard work. And there are some qualities that I've begun to respect because of how much hard work is involved. Those qualities are things like inspiration, persistence, and an attitude of continuous improvement. And without these qualities, creating change in such a traditional organization such as Jaguar Land Rover is very difficult. And I no longer underestimate the effort behind being the change agent. So I'm going to start our journey off here. We started, as Gene mentioned, in Portland, Oregon. We started just with 2 of us. who knew that our output wasn't quite meeting our potential. And we had read about higher performing teams, and we had read about this DevOps thing, and we spent 6 months convincing my boss to allow us to go to our first DevOps Enterprise Summit in San Francisco in 2016. Here I feel we were handed the inspiration we needed. We were given books like The Phoenix Project. You may have heard of that one. We were given books like The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt, which talks about the theory of constraints. And we were given the fuel and the inspiration required for us to begin to transform our organization. And so we made it back to our place of work after the conference, and we did probably what everyone does at the end of the conference, and that is have all these ideas on your head that you're going to change the business today. And you are going to take over how we develop software in our business today. But the unfortunate reality is nobody else went to the same conference. Nobody else is just as energized as you are. And you kind of fall flat on your face for a second and realize, all right, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. And what we really knew, and I've noticed this a few times in my career, is we needed to get something working. And what I've noticed is working software trumps everything. So we knew we had to at least prove out on a small scale that what we were talking about and what we had learned actually made sense. So we set off to find a server. The server we found wasn't this dusty, nor actually was it a Dell computer, and it was actually a rack mount. Didn't look anything like this. However, the software that we ran could run on anything. We ran free and open source software. We ran Linux because we were very familiar with the Linux operating system. We ran GitLab. It was free and open source, and we knew we wanted to migrate to Git. GitLab also contains continuous integration, GitLab CI. So we decided that, you know what, this feels like a package deal. This feels like the right thing. This will be our start. So we started with 1, 2, 3 projects that all had a bust factor of 1. They all had one person on their team that knew how the build worked or knew how the automated testing worked. And we slowly brought each of them in to the idea of continuous integration. Unfortunately, some of the larger projects took over so much of the resource based off of this server, we'd actually at some points lose our revision control system because our build slave and our revision control system were on the same machine. So we actually did what any software team does when they find themselves in a pickle, and that is buy more hardware. We bought 3 additional servers and 3 additional build slaves. We've got GitLab running as a revision control, and we've got GitLab CI using 3 additional build slaves. Unfortunately, what came with 3 build servers were 3 additional personalities. And if your commits continuous integration pipeline ran on runner 2 or 3, you were waiting 4 to 8 times as long than if it ran on runner 1. But it was the same machine, same OS, same configuration, right? We eventually began to add more projects to this. And when we added more volume to our 3-runner set, we started seeing complaints. Now, I don't really think of them as complaints. I like to think of them as gentle and little positive feedback packages written in an explosive email with choice words. However, this was our only method of continuous feedback to make our course corrections. But equally, if not more important than the complaint itself, is the response or the reaction to the complaint. And it's this idea of psychological safety. Can I bring a complaint that I know my voice is heard, I know that it is valid, and I know that somebody cares about solving my issue? And I really feel that in an environment without psychological safety, only the assumptions prevail. So some of the complaints we received. If my job landed on 2 or 3, it was always really slow, and we understood that one. We had complaints like, at 12 noon, all of the developers committed at the same time. My jobs were always in a queue. I always had to wait forever for my jobs to be able to finish, right? And one of my favorite complaints here, which led to a big course correction, is I asked the ops team 3 weeks ago to add a build dependency on the build servers, and it still hasn't been added yet. I'm just going to go back to building on my own, right? Now, this one obviously is a knife right to the heart because you feel like you've started to regress. But what I really like about this complaint is it led to a behavioral change as well as a technical change. And so we decided, instead of continuing the same direction, to move to ephemeral Docker containers to run all of our builds. And with ephemeral Docker containers, we defined every piece of build infrastructure as code. We used Packer recipes to find a Docker container, and every application developer could now change the underlying infrastructure at which built their application. They were empowered. They now had the self-service to do their life cycle on their own. And you're never going to receive the ops complaint because you've handed over the keys. Does that make sense? We still had complaints, and we still had other problems to solve. We added more projects, we adopted more projects. We actually solved some of the configuration drift that we had prior because we ran in an ephemeral pattern, and it was an on-the-fly continuous build, and we would essentially delete the container at the end of it. But we still had issues. We still had capacity issues as we increased the volume. We had issues that come with maintaining hardware. As you guys may know, power outages, internet service provider outages, CPU fans overheating, switch outages, you name it, maintaining bare metal is really not sustainable. With these latest complaints, we actually real quick, I had somebody show up to a stand-up once and said, all of our bare metal servers don't do anything at night. Why don't we mine Bitcoin at night? While I'm a huge fan of cryptocurrency, I did feel like this was another time for us to have a course correction. And instead of mining Bitcoin at night, we decided to move to the cloud. And this was a huge technology move for us because instead of just having ephemeral Docker containers, we now had ephemeral EC2 containers. And now every time that we needed to spin a commit, or every time we had a commit and we needed to spin up a build server, it was a fresh EC2 instance and a fresh Docker container. So we still kept the Docker container ephemeral piece, but now we've eliminated the lack of capacity. And when we moved to the cloud, at this point was when we started to adopt many more projects. We were at about 50 or 60 developers, at which point the bigger projects started to become interested. And at this point, I was asked to come over to England. Not quite as violent as Scorpion does to Sub-Zero here, but and I don't really look good in green either, so that's definitely not me. But we were asked, my family and me, were asked to move over to England to continue the transformation. And instead of just touring castles and eating fish and chips, we wanted to ensure that we could create value for other bigger projects as well. So I was implanted in a new city and a new culture and many more sheep on my way to work than I ever thought possible. But I began to realize that the maturity and growth had to come from the bigger numbers within our organization, and that it wasn't just about the technology, it was about the people. And I had a coworker recently bring me a revelation, and that is when somebody is promoting a tool, and this tool offers and is packed in there 10 years of software engineering experience that we put into this massive feature set, does my team actually acquire a free 10 years of experience? I like to think of it as like the RPG of life. You've acquired a tool, all of a sudden plus 10 software engineer power? The answer is that's not actually the case. The team of engineers have felt the pain for the last 10 years on why these features make sense and why these features resolved their pain. But we miss out of all the growth experience. And I've actually had to tell tool vendors, we're not mature enough yet for your product. Unfortunately, sometimes I know that is the right answer for us in the longer term, but my team simply doesn't have the maturity to be able to understand why the tool exists in the first place, and we don't get that immediate effect. I had the realization I did the same thing when I came to England. and I realized that I imposed a tool set without transferring the pain as well. So I had to transfer that pain, and I had to get them to understand why things are the way they are and why we've created this tool set. Around this time is when we started to adopt infotainment. And with infotainment, we looked at some of the key indicators on the infotainment developer environment. And we knew we had a lot of room for improvement. The first indicator, in fact, there's a quote by Gary Groover: "If feedback takes days or weeks to get to them, it is of limited value to the developer's learning." And really the problem statement here was our feedback loops were 4 to 6 weeks. Could you imagine writing code today and 6 weeks from now being told whether or not it works or is broken? I don't remember the shirt I wore yesterday, let alone what I had for breakfast this morning, let alone what I wrote 6 weeks ago. And chances are I've been working on features for the last 6 weeks. And for me to try to unpick what I was thinking at that point could be a huge context switch penalty. Infotainment also had a significantly higher number of contributors, up to 1,000 contributors. And what we noticed is the contributions don't come linearly, they come in bursts. We actually found that Thursdays were the day that most of our developers committed on. And when we had manual code reviews, if we didn't have reviewers ready on Thursday, we would create our own backlog. We also had a tremendous amount of complexity built into our Linux distribution. And there were only 3 people in the entire world that knew how our build system worked end to end. I remember being on a phone call with 12 other people discussing essentially how we're going to make a change to the build system. And every one of them had a different idea and a different way of actually doing it. It was massively complex. And none of the applications actually understood how their application fit in the rest of the ecosystem. This was our time to shine. We looked at some of the complaints that had previously been made, and unfortunately we were at a point where complaints had stopped. The people handing in the complaints never had resolution. And this is a point I feel within engineering where we've kind of lost the battle. However, this was our time to shine. And we knew, instead of following the current direction that we had for infotainment, we were going to adopt the same tool set. We improved on the indicators. We went from 4 to 6 weeks to 30 minutes to receive your build back and your feedback. We automated all of the processes around these burst merge requests. We also changed it so that no longer 3 people in the entire planet knew how the build system works. Everyone does. And we changed and refactored the entire build system to be extremely simple. And I'm talking, if you're a JavaScript developer making one application in our infotainment system and you have no prior knowledge of how Linux works, you could know how to incorporate your app into our build system within 30 minutes. By making things more simple, it allowed us to increase the throughput. Since then, we've delivered an infotainment system for 9 different vehicles. And each of these vehicles takes the same infotainment system and takes the same Linux distribution. To give you a little visual indicator of what an infotainment system looks like, in one of our latest vehicles, this is in the Range Rover Velar, we've started to expand more than one screen now. If you notice on here, we've got a lower screen and we have an upper screen. We power both of these, as I mentioned, in one of the 40 embedded devices in the vehicle. Now, infotainment isn't always thought of as a safety-critical device on the vehicle. There are, however, some safety-critical features. One is your reverse camera, pretty important, right? Another one is your park aid beeps, also pretty important. And another one is your battery usage and how much range you have left and your efficiency of your battery. Which leads me to the next infotainment system that we delivered, and that is the iPace. And that's what you see actually in the foyer. We can get the next one. And this was a game changer for the business because they, well, dropped the combustion engine. They moved to electric only, but they also took something that was normally just a prototype and turned it into something we could mass produce. In fact, our vehicle line director, Ian Hoban, says it was important for us to come out with the I-Pace and an electric vehicle first before the established market to ensure that Jaguar engineering could show its dominance. We asked ourselves, how could we change the game from infotainment perspective for the I-Pace? And instead of ditching the combustion engine, we ditched the dealership visits. And we implemented software over the air. And this huge Linux distribution that we build, upwards towards 700 times per day now in a continuous integration pattern on a dev branch or a master branch or a release branch, we can now deliver to every vehicle in the form of small incremental deltas. We can also deliver it to the vehicle while you're driving and not interrupt your daily life. In fact, I showed Gene yesterday, we started a download and an install while I was driving, and the entire thing happened in the background. Jeff even made the comment, this is blue-green deployment for vehicles. We've got a dual banking strategy that allows us to essentially eliminate any risk to your active bank and eliminate any risk to your infotainment system and install directly in a passive bank and switch it over on your next startup. This was my secret weapon to not only provide a tremendous amount of value to the customer, but also to our development environment. And this is my favorite part about this feature. There aren't many features that you can give directly to a customer that is also going to help your development. But instead of just deploying to our 600,000 vehicles in the market worldwide, we can now iterate extremely fast on our own development environment with continuous deployment to vehicles within engineering. And in fact, remember that 4 to 6 weeks figure. On commit, it took typically 6 weeks for it to finally land in a vehicle and let you know whether or not you broke something. That happens now within an hour. Build system to vehicle within an hour. We used to talk about the indicator. One of my favorite indicators is deploys per day per developer. But I was always embarrassed to share ours because it was always below 1. All of our new software wouldn't actually make it to vehicles. It was always batched together. And now I'm happy to say we can deploy, and we have been in our engineering environment, 50 to 70 times per day of each individual piece of software to a target or to a vehicle. That video that you watched, they didn't include anything about Git, so I'm pretty bummed about that. But the video talks about essentially eliminating the idea of ever going to the dealership anymore. And what I like about this idea is we're changing the value stream. No longer are deployments limited to a traditional software release cycle. We've now skirted every single process to get a technician a new piece of software and bother somebody else's day, one of our owners, to come into a dealership and spend an hour waiting for their vehicle to be done. We've now empowered the customer to be their own technician. There are some lessons learned over the last 2 years that I want to share with you. Go to the next slide. Here we go. I didn't understand the difference between a true strategy and a set of objectives. But ultimately, a true strategy is what can make you more competitive in the marketplace, and not just a vision statement. I learned that if you're doing principle-based software delivery, it means uncomfortable and conflicting opinions. What I've noticed is at your core, if you think that something's right, fight for it. I've learned that democracy isn't always the best approach. Even if we got those 12 people that were all on the same phone call to agree to a majority, it may still not have been the best route to take. I've learned that articulating the why is very challenging. And I've learned spending all night trying to come up with why there is a significant return on investment in improving the throughput or improving your development environment is worth it. I've also learned to lead with focus, positivity, and transparency. And this idea of a blameless culture and psychological safety can always ensure that you're thinking about what could go wrong. Speaking of what could go wrong, the risk associated with software over the air is potentially the capability to brick 1 million vehicles overnight. We still need help. We also still have problems to help solve that we don't know exist yet. We're also recruiting more attitudes of continuous improvement. And we'd love to hear about your challenges. We'd love to hear about your problems. And we'd love to hear about what resonated with our DevOps journey with your own business. That's all my time. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good rest of your conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. By the way, I'm also pleased to announce that all of the slides that you'll be seeing today will be published by the end of the day. So stay tuned on Slack and email. They will be published, again, within the day. The next speaker is Amy Bechtel, Senior Manager, Next Generation Infrastructure, and John Schmidt, Director of Product Management from Capital One. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, technology leaders are increasingly being given more responsibilities, and they're finding obstacles outside of the technology value stream. So one of the areas that dev and ops are incredibly reliant upon are the product owners and the product managers. Classically, they are the ones who prioritize the work that we do, from the customers, from the organizations that we serve. But we also need their help to ensure that the non-functional requirements are properly prioritized. And if you're an organization like Parts Unlimited in the Phoenix project, we need their help if we're actually going to conquer technical debt, perhaps for the very first time. So the next talk is one that I'm incredibly excited about, because Amy Bechtel is co-presenting with John Schmidt, the Director of Product Management. We asked them to teach us about how we can get product managers on board, especially the reluctant and conservative ones. So with that, Amy, John. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. It's an honor to be here. I'm Amy Bechtel, and I started leading DevOps transformations in 2013.
And I'm John Schmidt. I am not an expert in DevOps, so thank you for letting me crash your party.
So a few years ago, Capital One embarked on a transformation, a technology transformation. If you could go one more slide. We need the clicker. All right, here we go. And we started to adopt Agile DevOps in the cloud. We are embracing open source, microservices architecture, RESTful APIs, and security is always a top priority. I joined Capital One, the credit card technology organization, in December of 2015 to help them adopt and mature their DevOps practices and solutions.
Yeah, and I joined Capital One 4 years ago in product management, and yeah, really excited about investing in software to change the world and make our customers more successful.
This is a relative notional depiction of John and I in the organization. And as you can see, there are several layers and complexity, and I am amazed that I found John. And when we met and found each other, we formed a partnership to help his team start their DevOps transformation. So in early 2017, my vice president sponsored the initiation of a DevOps acceleration service where we would provide DevOps engineers to the application teams to help them adopt continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous operations in the cloud. So I'm leading this new service, And I have been asked and charged to help drive a transformation. And I ask myself every day, as a change agent, how can I support a DevOps transformation in an organization of this size and complexity? What I'm hoping today is that when we share our story about our partnership, you will take away some of those tidbits and nuggets that helped us drive the transformation for John's teams. So I'm leading this acceleration service. Our motto is no fear releases. I have a new team, a new service, and I had no customers yet, and I had to go out and start talking to my tech colleagues to get some business. I was surprised when I started talking to them that I was hearing, we don't have time right now, you're going to have to talk to our product owner, that's up to our product owner, and I kept repeatedly hearing I needed to talk to the product owner. I was taken back, but I guess I understand now that we're all in on DevOps. They're sharing a backlog, the DevOps engineers and the software engineers, and the product owner is prioritizing the backlog and having to weigh the priority of the functional requirements versus the non-functional. I had this new insight, but I also had an insight that I had a really narrow focus, and this is a little bit of foreshadowing for what John's going to talk about later, and that I wasn't looking at the people outside of my line of sight. And I had to go do something that was not instinctive to me and not something I was not very good at, and that's go talk to the product owners and talk to the business. I shared my insight about the product owners with my director at the time, who then arranged for me to brief the product managers forum that John was leading and is still leading to this day. I prepared this great deck filled with facts from the 2016 State of DevOps report, going 22 times faster, just espousing the benefits of DevOps and the service and how my team was going to help bring humane IT to these software engineering teams. I was surprised after briefing these product managers that I received silence and glazed over looks. And after getting to know John and hearing from him that these are some of the things that they were thinking, very similar to a lot of my tech colleagues. There was one person, though, who was listening and smiling and speaking up and asking questions, and that was John.
Yeah, and I was immediately impressed with Amy and knew what she was talking about. And, you know, I'd been struggling to get better speed on my team. We had a very exciting set of value hypotheses to invest in capabilities that were going to allow us to do a lot more interesting things for our customers, but we just weren't going fast enough. And this whole DevOps thing was a bit foreign to me, but it sounded very interesting, and I immediately realized it was going to take a lot more than a couple non-functional stories squeezed into the backlog to get to the speed that we needed.
So John and I began talking and getting to know each other. I'm disappointed to hear that I didn't have any magic words that made him go, aha, I want to do DevOps. And I'm sorry to disappoint you. Our presentation is not going to give you a script or prescription what those magic words are. But I did learn that John was facing some challenges that had not yet been solved for.
Yeah, and you know, the team that was working on this particular platform was well established. They were able to deliver, extremely skilled. It was a very advanced engineering investment for us. But it still took 3 weeks at best to get a line of code from dev into production.
At this point, I want to commend John. I think it's really hard to recognize and then admit that you have anti-patterns and that it's even harder to do something about it. And that's what he did. So my presentation wasn't what did it. What I learned is that John had visited the Target dojo. Target is a retail chain giant in the United States who stood up a large facility and ran multiple teams through to help with their cultural transformation to a tech company. And he had visited that, and he had learned about the benefits of that model and the benefits of the dojo. I had also been practicing a modified form of dojo when I was in shared solutions engineering in card tech, and I also was aware of those benefits. We agreed that that was a model that we wanted to try or experiment with for his teams and for my acceleration service moving forward. I could probably spend an hour on this slide. I'm that passionate about this subject. And I am not a learning expert by any means, the way that John's not a DevOps expert. But it was fascinating to see that this type of model and what it can do for a team and the whole team learning model. The dojo, after I've run several of them now, I believe is the fastest and most effective way to adapt a team to an engineering culture and build accelerated expertise in DevOps in the cloud. I mentioned that our motto for the acceleration service was no fear releases. Now our motto is no fear change. After John and I agreed, I started meeting with his product leadership team. He formed a product leadership team comprised of the product owner, the scrum master, and the tech lead. They sat together every day next to each other. I mean, we just got Dev and Ops sitting together. My mind is blown that now we have tech and the business sitting together. And I spent about 3 weeks planning with them. We planned with 2 teams, 2 web APIs, 9 to 10 engineers, which is about the max that you want to go. This team had worked together for quite a few months. They were co-located. They had some but limited DevOps skills. And we scoped out a 6-week challenge to help upskill them to adopt CI/CD pipelines for 2 different APIs that supported a federated code contribution model where they would have multiple teams contributing code that had to be integrated into their application and executing the same test code in both pipelines. I am a planner. I've never done this model before. I was trying everything to get this lock-tight plan in place, and my anxiety went up. And John saw that. This is normal. It's understandable. And instead of quelling it, we embraced it. And John looked at me and he said,
"It's going to be messy."
And I just heard Chris Hill talk about psychological safety. I knew when he said that. I now know what that means. He and we were creating a psychologically safe environment in which this team could transform. This is our journey map. We spent about 9 weeks together, the first 3 preparing. I would love to go into every detail, but we don't have time today about what each week entailed. This is an emotional journey. I want to highlight the 2 dips because these are very important points that are probably going to be experienced in every transformation. And they're points where you can either stop and quit or decide to move forward. And there are very important points in which, as leadership, you need to decide what you want to do, and if you're going to push forward, that you're critical in that pivot. This particular team, as we mentioned, had been working together for quite a while, and their tech lead knew them very well. In that first week after we kicked off on week 0, the anxiety was high. They were uncomfortable. They felt exposed. They were being asked to learn skills that they had never done before. A chef developer is learning Java. And they were asking, why are we doing this? It's not broken. It was working. And their tech lead just looked at them and said, you know what? It's a leap of faith. That's what this team needed to hear in order to get the pivot. And we got the pivot. Then they went over the hump, and they said, all right, we get it now. We're good. I want to get back to code and business as usual. And we said, no, you're going to meet the challenge. And they did. By the end of the 6 weeks, they had reduced what was about 3 weeks of testing to 3 hours. And that's afterwards, I interviewed John for a blog post, and he had these wise words.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other way we could have gotten there. The team is truly set up for long-term success. I mean, even now, just over a year after we completed the dojo, that acceleration has only continued. And I don't think we could have got there. And it wasn't just the skills and getting the pipeline running. It was also a change in their skill set, mindset, and culture.
Yep, it was a behavior change. We moved on. I went on to do a couple more dojos. I had some great new influencing skills with the product owner and the tech lead. And John moved on to a machine learning and data science space within our organization and started to observe some of the same challenges.
Yeah, and the slight difference here, I'm just going to say slight difference, was that we had some fantastically brilliant people, data scientists with some really strong technical skills, but fairly limited engineering experience and almost no DevOps experience. So we were facing a pretty steep hill, and so I thought, you know what, I'm going to see what Amy's doing.
And we said, let's do another dojo. And so John called me, and starting last November, I met with another new product leadership team comprised of the Scrum Master, the tech lead, and the product owner, and we scoped out a new challenge. This was a sharp contrast to the first team that we had worked with. It was still 2 teams, and there was a data modeling team and a platform engineering team for the data models. Still about 9 to 10 engineers. They were brand new. They had never worked together before. They were distributed across multiple locations. They had no DevOps skills, and they had a pretty steep challenge with trying to adopt the CI/CD pipeline for a couple different machine learning models into a container orchestration in the cloud. And because of this steep hill, we scoped out a 10-week challenge. We co-located into an off-site facility, and we started, we knew again, my anxiety went up. And my team did not know machine learning either. We had never done DevOps for machine learning or data science, and these guys had never done DevOps. So it was scary. We were afraid, to be honest, and our anxiety went up. And once again, John said,
it's going to be messy.
So here's a 10-week journey map. And we hit the same first dip, what I called the fear dip. Do you think if I had said to a bunch of data scientists, it's a leap of faith, how do you think that would have gone over? So we had to look at who this team was, and we called in the big guns. We called in an agile coach. We ran an anonymous survey, and we did what was called a mind mining, where we wanted to understand what they were thinking and what they were feeling, and we would address them. And so we had a half day of talking about what the results were of that survey, and we started implementing team building exercises each week, and we established norms and values with this. And we created a psychologically safe environment. So we got through the pivot, and then they doubled down, and they started flying with learning DevOps. And then we hit the holidays, so we had our second, what I call the mojo dip. But I think it's important to highlight that what worked for the first team to pivot wouldn't have worked for the second team. And that as a leader, and we want to influence these teams, we have to understand how that team thinks, what their values and beliefs are, and adapt our approach to support them, not the other way around. They're not going to listen. So as you can see, there's a similar pattern with 2 dips, and what I call the dojo mojo dips. Usually the first dip is a can we do this dip? And the second one is when can we just get back to code and business as usual? But that's not what we want. So we commit to at least 6 weeks when we try to do this. And you might ask, why 6 weeks? I don't know how many of you have tried to adopt a new habit and break an old one, or establish a new routine. It takes at least 6 weeks for that to become intrinsic. So there's a lot of studies on this. Instead of reading all of those studies, what I highly recommend is there's a great YouTube video called Backwards Bicycle, and if you haven't seen that, it will reiterate this point. But even after the 6 weeks over, I don't think that's enough. In order to sustain this change, it will take repeated practice and continued commitment from both the business and tech. Today, those teams that had their DevOps journey, jump-started by the dojo and by John, are experiencing continued success. And that dojo model has proved it can produce faster, lasting results, even when teams have different skills, technologies, and needs. John, do you think that you would have gotten as far as you did today had you not done the dojo?
No, there's really no way, and I can't really think of how else we could have gotten there. And in many ways, it exceeded my expectations. I didn't tell the team at the time. I told them afterwards. But in fact, things went so well that I can't even share with all of you a lot of details about what we were able to accomplish. But a few things we wanted to summarize are the team was able to create several reusable building blocks that will fundamentally change our ability to innovate. And by innovate, I mean test, develop new types of features, get them out into production, into the world, and get feedback from reality if these things are really resonating. But the hypotheses that we're working against are what can we do to give our customers a lot more control over their money and set them up for success. And that's something that has been a game changer for us. The second thing is, and there's probably a DevOps term for this, but there's something from a product perspective I love to call the oops tax, where sometimes you might be able to get everyone together, get some temporary speed, get something in market, but then inevitably technical debt, other problems creep up and you start crashing. I call that the oops tax. And really the foundational stability, safety, and resiliency of the two platforms has really facilitated ongoing acceleration. So we've had a very smooth acceleration curve. And the speed is real. I mean, the ability to go from weeks, or in the case of these machine learning models, a very uncertain multi-month journey to being able to get new code out there in hours has been fantastic.
I realize now that John is more the exception than the rule. I like to say that I got lucky. John says I created my own luck. It doesn't matter. What we're hoping is to now shift gears and provide you some insight into how product managers or the business think so that you can take that back to your organizations and hopefully get an engagement like we got.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch gears and use a lot of metaphors. And I'll apologize in advance. I grew up in Canada, so some of these metaphors might not be as accessible to all of you, but I'm going to try to stitch these together. And I'm going to try to, if I can, make a connection between bears, picnic baskets, an angry bag of money, and rowing on a river. So I want to start off with a quick review of what I consider to be somewhat of an ancient secret, in that if you want to motivate an audience or you want to persuade someone, you need to really understand, what's going on in their motivational framework. And generally speaking, my perspective is most people want to be a happy camper, but in order to be a happy camper, they want to avoid bears and they want to find picnic baskets. Now, again, I grew up in Canada. Bear safety is an important life skill to learn at a young age. And the picnic baskets, you can imagine whatever you want in the picnic basket. It could be intrinsic, extrinsic motivators. I personally would love to find a nice bottle of single malt scotch and maybe an internet connection in my picnic basket, but it can be whatever you want. But those are the two major things that are going to motivate your audience and things you need to tune into if you want to influence them. And I want to double click on this point briefly. Because it turns out the way our brains are wired, bears are much more persuasive than picnic baskets. And the thing is, this sounds obvious, but it's actually something that I forget myself in many cases. I get in front of someone and I'm really excited to tell them all the benefits of this great idea I have or the team has and all the cool things it's going to do for us. But I realize only later that I completely neglected to address the bear in the room. And because bears are so much more persuasive than picnic baskets, it almost doesn't matter how many awesome picnic baskets you put in front of the person you're trying to convince, the bear will outweigh them all. So one of the things I can share is I don't necessarily know what all of your business and product management partners might be worried about, but I can definitely share with you a little bit about my bear. And for that, I want to introduce the angry bag of money. That's my bear, is an angry bag of money, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about the angry bag of money. So to me, this is what it feels like when I've succeeded in getting investment support. So we have a good set of value hypothesis. The senior executives that are investing in us feel great, but then I feel like we're not making progress fast enough. Maybe our options are too constrained. Maybe we have really painful bottlenecks that are causing increasingly painful Game of Thrones-like trade-off battles. Or there's that background fear that competitors and disruptors are going to get there better or faster than us. And so it feels like, the money's done its job. It's there, it's sitting on the table, and it has this look, and it's staring at me and saying, hey, I showed up. I'm here to support you. Why can't you go faster? So in order to help all of us get to know the Angry Bag of Money a bit better, I'd like to get your assistance in participating in a brief game. So the way this game works is Amy is going to pose a question. She's going to ask all of you if the Angry Bag of Money cares about something. And then we're going to want you to respond. You can use, volume, say, shout out yes or no, and then to see if the Angry Bag of Money cares about the thing that Amy asks about. So, and I'll be here to kind of provide clues and tips if you get stuck.
Does the Angry Bag of Money care if your code is in a Docker container?
That's right.
Does the Angry Bag of Money care if you use Jenkins or Circle CI? No. Ansible or Chef? No. Azure or AWS? Does the Angry Bag of Money care if on Monday morning the release is out there and it knows that it's working, but everybody spent all weekend trying to get it out and had several rollbacks? No.
Yeah, they're really good at this game.
Yeah.
All right.
So what does the Angry Bag of Money care about?
Yeah.
Well, does the Angry Bag of Money care about getting value to the business and to the market faster?
Absolutely.
Does it care about fast feedback from that customer and the ability to revert to a previous known good state faster? And does the Angry Bag of Money care whether the people got to go to their personal events or soccer games or parties over the weekend?
Yes.
This Angry Bag of Money does.
Yeah. Capital One, anyways. Yeah.
Capital One does.
Yeah. So a lot of the benefits of DevOps often get framed or explained in terms of speed. So I wanted to, and I realize it's probably risky to attempt a physics joke in a room where there's probably a lot of people with a strong engineering background, but I kind of think of this as a law of physics, is that, speed minus safety equals crash. I think it's called the law of trying not to crash. Actually not a real law of physics, but I think the notion of speed, it sounds cool, it sounds fun, but I think speed that isn't paired with an appropriate amount of safety inevitably leads to a crash. And so I think one of the things that Amy said to me early on, which really resonated, was the concept of no fear releases. Because I thought that was key. Having that element of safety is fundamental to being able to go fast at a sustainable pace. So I've gone through a few metaphors, and now I want to kick it all the way up to an allegory and walk you through a very brief story where we have a hero who is rowing on a river. This hero is great rower, knows what he's doing, strong, making really good pace. And it's actually a race. He's racing against other rowers. He's pulling ahead. He's getting up. He's doing some freestyling. He's actually looking ahead to see all the exciting stuff that's in front of him. He knows he's going to win this race. He's so much faster than the other rowers. The difficulty is, even though he's really good at this, there's a problem. And there's a problem that's outside of his relatively narrow perspective. And that problem is that the downstream speed of the current is faster than he's rowing. It's faster than the speed of all the rowers. And actually, not only that, but at the end of that river, there's a very precipitous waterfall. And all of these rowers are going to go over that waterfall at the pace they're going. And they're just too focused on this race that they're in. And I think the fundamental point I want to make here about speed is that if the rate at which you're shipping and learning is slower than the rate at which the world is changing, inevitably you're all going to go over the waterfall. And in the short run, you might feel like you're doing great. Maybe you're shipping just as fast or a little bit faster than the other teams in your enterprise, or maybe you're doing a little bit better, a little bit faster than your competitors. But eventually, someone is going to either change the game and completely outperform all of you and wave to you as you fall over the waterfall, or maybe a disruptor will come in and say, hey, maybe I'm not going to row, maybe I'm going to use an engine. And then your whole industry goes over the waterfall. And I think this happens all the time. And so for me, when I think about the necessity of speed in a competitive environment, because as a product manager, I want to invest in software to create or sustain a competitive advantage for my business. If I take that broad perspective, I don't want to be in an industry that goes over the waterfall. And I know that if I can't ship code, I can't learn fast. And if I can't learn faster than the rate at which the world is changing, I'm going to go over the waterfall.
I began this presentation and I asked the question is how, as a change agent, can affect change in an organization of this size and complexity. I know we didn't give you magic words or a script to take back and talk to your product owners. I believe, hopefully, that we gave you an approach and a methodology. And if you were to take John's words of wisdom and the approach that we took with the dojo, these are it's actually 10 steps. It's on the next slide. The 9 things that we would recommend, and if you adopt how we did it, that could hopefully get you the results that we got. Step 10 is the most important of all, and that is building a relationship between business and tech. I've been on an extraordinary journey. It's been probably some of the highlight of my career has been working with these really challenging teams and implementing the CI/CD and DevOps solutions for them, and learning a lot about how teams think and what's going to work to help influence them to change. So the irony is that I was hired to help drive change and change how people work, and they ended up being the ones that changed me. And I just want to thank you for that and for all that we have done. We are asked to end with sort of what we need help with, and I'm hoping that we get to talk to many of you today at either a Q&A or at lunch. We want to hear from you how you have supported culture change inside your organization, not just technology change, but how you influence the people. Specifically, what did you do to influence your business to invest in DevOps? And then finally, how did you talk to the engineers and influence them to want to change their skill sets and work differently? Thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to meeting you.
Yeah, thanks.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, John. I just want to take a quick note, and thank you, Amy, and thank you, John, that also here at the conference is Dr. Topo Pal, who is presented every year at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, and he's also speaking this year here in London. He's speaking at 1:40 p.m. this afternoon, and I think this presentation and Topo will really show and demonstrate how Capital One is building a world-class engineering organization spanning over 8,000 software engineers. All right, the next speaker is the team from Adidas. As I mentioned, one of the programming objectives that we had for this year was to elevate the focus on next-generation operations and infrastructure. And this talk came to us through one of our programming committee members, Jason Cox from Disney. And he mentioned some of the interactions that he had with someone that he met at the conference last year. And when I heard about what this team was doing, I got so excited because apparently at this conference they had some aha moments that really set into motion something that I think is truly astonishing and I think will become increasingly common among operations and infrastructure teams, not just at Adidas, but teams all over. So here to share the story is Fernando Conago, Senior Director, Platform Engineering, and Marcus Rauter, Vice President, Platform Engineering and Architecture.
Creativity. See my creativity.
Regarde-moi créer.
Joping Chwangi. See my creativity.
Baddest thing you ever seen. I'm a front page magazine. I'm galactic, baby, I'm a star. It don't matter where you are, you should
So, thank you for this. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you, Gene, for inviting us. So, after seeing a short video from our company, I hope you all know it. Maybe first a short introduction to ourselves. So that's us. So I'm Marcus, and my colleague Fernando. He will introduce himself. So we're working. You see a little bit where we are in the organization. So I'm heading the platform engineering and architecture, which is kind of new and fresh group since January this year, actually. And maybe a little bit of myself. I'm 39 years old. I'm a father of 2 kids, 4 and 8, and that's probably what keeps me busy all the time. Rest of the day, I'm working in this great company and driving the change ahead, what we had around DevOps over coffee, the story we're going to tell you today.
Well, I am Fernando. Okay, I am also father of 2 kids, but I'm 20 years old. And I've been devoting my entire life to create high-performing teams from Spain, okay, for software delivery companies. And since 3 years, I have, as I say, always the best job in the world, okay, because I can create the new, first leading the software development organization and now platform engineering from a global company with global impact, a company like Adidas, and walking distance from home, from where I was born. So that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's enough for us. So maybe shortly a little bit about our company, and this is the belief we have in the company, that through sports we have the power to change life, and that's very important for us. It's the essence of all what we hear. It's rooted in our heritage and the product. And of course, this company is a large corporation. We also do have a strategy, and sometimes you need to link a lot of the investments and things we're doing back to the ambition. So looking at the company strategy, we call it Create the New. And it's for us, being a marketing company to the heart, it's about the product, the brand, the desire, and the people who are wearing our products, doing sports, changing lives. And of course, being a DAX corporation, we are also enlisted to the stock market, and there's of course financial targets, which you can see more on the right-hand side. The bottom and top line of kind of efficiency targets, we also have that and bear that in mind. Most importantly, how do we tackle this? And this you can see in the 3 pillars of the strategy, which is speed. So it's not just the speed of delivery of software product and or supply chain. It's really about making fast and good decisions. Another one is cities, which is a more, for us, a synonym of getting our products and solutions closer to the consumers where they are, the big cities, the small cities, urban and rural areas, but also about open source. And as a non-IT person, open source sometimes translates a little differently. So for us, it's open innovation, that's how we work with partners and colleagues, but we also translated it into IT, also jumping more on the classic open source term. And last but not least, and that's the most important, and that's why we're here today telling you a story of DevOps over coffee, is the culture, the people. So people working for and with us, and this is the storyline we'd like to share with you. Of course, some hard facts. I just jump over them very quickly. 21 billion revenue, 1 billion contribution, 1.1. We have more than 58,000 employees all over the world, 170 subsidiaries, and of course, some major location. You probably don't find it on the map, Herzogenaurach, spells very differently, but also larger locations like Amsterdam, Portland, of course, Shanghai, and so forth. Yeah, and as said, oh yeah, Zaragoza. You also don't find it on the map that easily. It's like Herzogenaurach. So maybe we start with a little bit of a history, and you see we do a handshake kind of presentation.
Yeah, let's start with a little bit of history because we are talking about a transformational journey. And in order to understand it better, I would like to start with the beginnings, okay? And I like this picture, okay, because this is how an internal software engineer capability looked like 4 or 5 years ago. Not because we didn't have anyone that knows how to develop, it's because we didn't, as a company, I think that we didn't value the capability enough, okay? So there was not a team behind. We have a couple of guys that knew how to code, but they felt, I think, like lonely and miserable working in different products, and at the end they end up leaving the company or turning to a project manager. Because we had an IT that it was mainly a demand manager or project manager-based IT, where we had a single software provider, our software vendor, the development vendor, and our demand manager was putting some work into their demand manager. They did the job, and 6 months later, you know the story, okay? I delivered whatever you like. So when we decided to start growing and try out, well, this is our engineering today. Okay, we have more than 150, and we continuously are growing, okay? By demonstrating that cost has been extremely reduced, quality has been extremely improved, but that's not important, okay? That we have enabled, the important thing is that we have enabled the speed in the business, okay? And it's what we keep doing. And that was one day where we celebrate our all engineering day with 150 people. Jean Kim, so we had the pleasure of having Jean giving us a keynote remotely from Starbucks in Portland, okay, to Germany. And I think that it was an amazing day. One thing that we could not think, like 2-3 years ago, impossible, okay? So how did we start, okay? For the very basic, we didn't have these things, so had to get our code under control, okay, with our ticketing systems, CI/CD, quality, our code repo. So we created like a perfect and traceable software delivery cycle. It was the first thing to do, okay? All our external, internal people started using our tooling. Okay, we had to categorize, okay, all the applications that we had. We had more than 1,000 IT systems, and every day we have more than 1,000 people developing code and putting code in our systems, okay? Mainly external by that time, and now little by little, we are adding our internal capacity there, okay? So we had the target of, okay, quality at the top. Being vendor independent, we started bringing different software providers and partners, and internal skills. Okay, we target that for every of our critical system, we needed to have some internal guy knowing how to build and code on top of the platform. And we are obsessed, we will get into details later, we are obsessed with data and metrics. So we created a very round metric called first time right, okay, and it was targeted to be the perfect metric. Lessons learned, don't do that. That's not working, okay? Because we put together the agile or in scope, okay, how many story points we deliver, okay, the different teams. That's tricky, you know, velocity is not always the best thing to measure. The defects and the quality, okay? And we try to do a one-size-fits-all strategy. That it was good by that time, but I think it was super complex, okay? Because we had huge existing code base, measuring this was difficult, but it was like the seed, okay? The seed of what we have right now with metrics, and I will explain you later, okay? And how was the way with focus on our people? It was challenging, okay? Because when you start deploying new engineers, all of them, it was a must for hiring that they were hands-on people wanting to do really cool stuff. But you deploy one engineer in a team of 15, 20 people from different software providers. It was super difficult because at the end the guy was doing, of course, coding sometime. It was what he was hired for, or he or she. But he was doing sometimes technical architecture because depending on the level of the architecture, we have some software architects doing boxes and arrows, okay? You know that? We pushed a lot already 3-4 years ago for automation everywhere and code quality. So imagine one guy receiving pull requests of 15 people from different vendors. At the end, you are completely lost track of the delivery. And at the end, who knows better? Because we wanted this traceability from contracts to delivery, even with our software providers. And at the end, the guy was sometimes taking care of the contracts, of the vendor management, of the, I don't know, doing the Scrum Master stuff. So it was super challenging. But at the same time, it was super rewarding for our people, okay? Because we felt like the Spartans, like the conquerors of a company that didn't believe in software development. And we stopped hearing little by little that, but we are Adidas. Why should we build software if we sell shoes? Now you don't hear this anymore, okay? That's important. We demonstrate by savings, by productivity, and of course we create the global impact, and now it's the model, okay? And now we are hiring like crazy, and we are creating these capabilities, okay? But as I said, so the fun level of the guys were, okay, they were more in the policeman side than in the technical geek side where that is why they were hired for. But what happened in the meantime? So in the meantime, they didn't feel so lonely anymore because communities started popping up, okay? And it's one thing that from the management we boost a lot, so connecting the guys. We changed the model, so we brought different vendors, okay? Different vendors, big ones, and also we brought what we call partners, okay? Not vendors. They are software companies or service companies that are very specialized, so you can learn with them. Sometimes they learn from you. Most of the time you learn from them, okay? And you have now one vendor for every kind of need. And of course, there was a huge change on the architecture. We started playing around with containers already 4 or 5 years ago, but I would say that the major change didn't come until we implemented our own Kubernetes clusters on-prem and in AWS beginning of last year, of 2017, okay? That was the game changer. So no excuse anymore to not deploy every day. Kubernetes was giving us, and is giving us, an unlimited set of resources So directly by default, we already build software, continuously integrated, ramping up mock data, enabling green-blue deployments. Everything is there. No excuse about, no, SAT is busy because this key user is testing, and UAT is busy because they are testing the release of 3 months ago. So we had tools that were not deployed to production in 2 years. 2 years ago. So that's a no-go, okay? So we now do things completely differently, okay? Now we have other game changes, like for us, like Kafka that is changing for us the way how our applications interact with each other, okay, based in streaming, or Terraform, okay? Now we have all the things that we build, even infrastructure, is completely automated. But, so that was, okay, I think that now is when the fun level, when things have started getting fun and up to speed, okay? But I will say, and now Marcus will tell why still what keeps us awake at night, okay? Because we are pushing a lot, and it's our obsession that all the teams keep providing the maximum speed possible and with the right freedom, okay? All the possible freedom, but without killing, okay, the advantage of working in a big company sometimes. That are this community, building by default resilience and secure application, and standard not by standards. Standard is because we don't want everyone reinventing the wheel all the time, okay? And also, we are Adidas, so at the same time, how do we make it fun? Because it's at the end what the guys that we hire wants, okay?
Yeah, so you probably heard it before from the speaker. If you want to go fast, and you don't have proper brakes, you might crash. So the faster you want to go, the better your brakes need to be. And that is exactly what we discussed. So how do we actually set this thing up? And we were working in a kind of a project mode with 8, 9, 10 people maybe as the people who were willing to drive the change. And then at one point in time, we said, okay, the way how we build the software and the way we set up the teams, it got to change. So why is it called DevOps over coffee? And this is a small storyline I'm going to give you. And I also had it when we talked to Gene before. So it actually started like this. And that's the Red Ox. It's a restaurant in Herzogenaurach. You will, even in Herzogenaurach, have difficulties finding it. And this is actually where we sat down the first time with our CIO. I call it the CIO plus 8, because there was 8 technical people trying to convince him to do things differently. And it felt a little bit like the Fellowship of the Ring, only we didn't have a ring to throw into some burning volcano. But this was really fighting against a lot of anticipation from the outside and the inside. How do we actually change the things, not in a small pilot? And why it's over coffee? Because at this point in time, there was a little coffee brand. We don't make a commercial here and that, but it was, and we had the Spanish colleagues there too, and he just was spot on that and said, okay, how do we call this little fellowship now we are going to do to change the way how we do development in the company? And he said, okay, that's the intention, so Café Intención. I hope I pronounced it correctly, Fernando?
Yeah, intención.
So we have the intention to change that. So when we met together and said, it was around in April 2017, said, okay, let us come back with a plan how we can do that. And not in a way that we create a small digital lab or 10 people on the side, but how we're really doing it on top of what the company is doing inside of the operating model of the complete IT. So, and we sat there and we did all the planning. And as in the movie, The Lord of the Rings, so when they lose Gandalf, we somehow lost the CIO on the way. So he was not available. We couldn't reach out to him. It was like, what happened? We have this great idea. We looked in DevOps topologies and all of these things. And then we said, okay, we need to have some other kind of coffee. And this is where we called it, okay, there needs to be some more carajo to it. So we had another coffee with the same group of 8 people, and we tried to convey back, so how do we do this now? And we made a really stringent plan in 2 months on top of the complete IT organization on how we're going to change the way we're working together. And there was this final call. And as in the movies, they find Gandalf somewhere later, and he wears a white robe. So I was with Michael, our COO, in a small town in Austria, Linz, where there's a brand we acquired called Fantastic, and they have like an office there with 100 engineers, and they're working in the way we wanted to do, but more like a startup on the side. And we sat there outside that I remember it was 2 a.m. in the morning in the small garden of the hotel. And we had a conversation. We put all the plans down. And I said, OK, Michael, can we now do this? And then we walked back and said, OK, let's do it. And this was basically marking the cornerstone of the decision of getting it changed. So what did we do? So first, we looked at how we currently organize. And you probably have some organization chart of yourself. I don't go into that very terribly. So what does it actually mean? There's certain units mirroring the business. We call them differently, digital IT, corporate marketing, you name it. And of course, we had started the years past some kind of horizontal delivery model. We had development, testing, integration, operations. But also we had the architecture side on the right-hand side and said, OK, we need to combine these teams together, not as a single unit, but as something working together on top of the current model. And how shall that actually look like? And the way we designed the organization, also to our cultural change, was we did some kind of a reverse convoy here. So we defined the products we would like these teams to create. And remember, this is the better brakes we all need to go faster. And we set up, OK, what is the principles we apply here to have the teams so that everybody in the team is empowered to lead, that we have a cross-functional collaboration on all of these silos you've seen before, and that we don't have a stringent set of hierarchy in the team, which is very important for such teams. And at the end of the day, so it didn't look terribly different. So when we set first the function, we said, OK, how do we work together? And the first one was, OK, we give it a name, as usually. Everything needs to have a name. But then we decided, OK, how do we enable and co-create with our colleagues in the function for the time being? And also, as our other main horizontal unit, which was there for years, IT infrastructure, was down. We said, OK, how do we connect back to them that we are making sure we are not cutting the line on top of them when we have everything software-defined using the cloud or commercial platforms. So it was super important first to tell our team how we want them to work. And this is the culture thing. So the culture will be applied. In the company, we have what we call the 3 Cs, creativity, confidence, and collaboration. And we said, OK, what is it what we would like to do? Ideas to action. Commit, then deliver, but also you're allowed to say no. And the other thing, most importantly, team success over individual success. Of course, we would like our people to be empowered, super strong individuals, of course. The platforms we're using, value-adding, and Fernando will show you afterwards a little bit how that looks like. But also, it was very important to tell others how it will be to work with us. And this is the most important point we started with, was the transparency. So tell people what you're doing, what you're not. Because if you're trying to deliver the brakes to the bob, you can go really fast. You have to tell people what you're doing and what you're not doing. The other thing was focus on value, to have shared common targets based on value. In the past, Fernando mentioned it, we had some metrics. We had a lot of metrics, like how much commit we do a day. But velocity means nothing if what you deliver is of no value. And also, most importantly, remove constraint. You probably know this ticket please thing. So you want something? Please raise a ticket. So it was the first thing we said, #no tickets. That doesn't mean, though, we create them. We create them, but at the end of a conversation. So the ways how we've embarked the teams, we are using also modern tools and ways to communicate and work with each other, but we're also doing, of course, our compliance check. And yes, of course, we are working with tickets, but the boundary is not the ticket. It's a means to document something for compliance. That's it. Of course, the collaboration is one of the biggest, and experiment and learn, which led us then to a way what we are calling for ourselves then the fluid organization, which is Fernando giving you a little bit of an insight how that actually looks like when you change teams differently and you disembark hierarchies.
Exactly. So we arrange ourselves also in products, okay? But for us also Scrum, that is the default, de facto for the organization, was not working, okay? Because we have really, really short-term assignments, sometimes hand in hand with this co-creation concept that we have with the different software delivery teams. So for us, a Kanban mode is working much, much better. And also this fluid. Why? Because of course you need these kings or these captains, okay, that are the guys standing in for the different platforms I will show you later that we have detected. But the rest of the guys the rest of our techie teams, we have a total of 60 around
65.
Around 60, 65 in platform engineering. They can be working in different products, different days, or even in the same day. Okay, so we have a common backlog, so we can manage our portfolio of platform engineering, but it's really really fluid. And as we have an OKR process for setting up our targets, and it's done every quarter, so it's really easy for us to change the direction. Okay. So our platforms, okay, and only to name it, I'm not going to enter into the detail. I can discuss with you later what we have. Okay. So as I told you, so the mother of the beast, that is our container orchestration, okay, based in Kubernetes. We have now around 18 clusters, I think, around the globe in different AWS regions, plus our on-prem for critical data that we cannot move to the cloud yet. Continuous integration delivery, where we provide some seed projects in our default languages, Java, JavaScript for the moment, and Go, we are getting there. And by default, you can fork it, and by default, you have security, auto-scaling, etc. Of course, we move also from our Jenkins to Jenkins as a service, so we have built our own decentralized tooling for continuous integration based on GitOps plus ephemeral agents, okay, because we realized that you cannot treat two projects the same way. Even ecom was eating up 60%, our ecom 60% of our resources in our central Jenkins, and you need to provide the teams speed and freedom to put their own plugins, install everything without affecting the rest. Monitoring, not only application, APM, login, also we are monitoring business, okay, with a face data based on face data platform based on Kafka and Elastic. Test automation, okay, we have also a common infrastructure for test automation, also with some artifacts that you can download and fork, and by default you have an end-to-end testing cycle. API, integration and streaming, okay. For the new world, okay, we apply streaming by default. And the old world in the core integration, we are also working heavily with the responsibles to make it also self-service, because it's one thing that we want to do. All our platforms being self-service for the different teams, so they can go as deep as possible. Okay. Also, our last platform, also moving to self-service, that is our ambition, is our big data platform, heavily based this one on AWS. Okay. And our ERP also, where we also apply continuous delivery practices on ERP. And now we are pushing, because I was discussing the other day with our colleague in ERP, and we need to be faster than the business. So let's not wait business to ask for speed. We know that we will provide the speed as IT. Okay, so we need to go one step further than business also in ERP. And what's our services will do? Okay, so of course, all our platforms are supported by our internal engineers, plus extended force with our trusted providers and colleagues from different companies, continuously evolving them until they become commodity. And we know that some of the platforms that we have now, they will not be there at the end of the year, because one cloud provider will provide this by default, and it will fit into our request. We consult, we co-create. Okay, we have different teams in the verticals, teams that they need more babysitting because they are not prepared, and teams that in fact they are teaching us things. Okay, so we are only the glue department that is putting things together. Training and onboarding. Okay, we are onboarding like 15 to 20 engineers every month that we are hiring. So it's heavily time consuming. Communities, meetups, internal, external, we do a lot. And what about the standards? Okay, how do we manage the standards? And I know that this word is, much of you don't like this word. But we are clear with this. So don't expect that as platform, as the central engineering team, we are setting up the standards for you there. Okay, we are only centralizing. So we have created our technical reference model. Okay, basically we have different groups or areas where they have a responsible. And it's the only requirement that you need to do if you are working in a vertical. One example is, coding languages. Okay, we have there our defaults, our exceptions for, Kotlin. Are you allowed to go Kotlin by default? Okay, if you are in the mobile space and you are Android developer, yes. If not, not. Okay? And the only requirement from a guy that is working in a product is if what is there in the technical reference model is not fitting your needs and you have something better, it's only raise your hand. You don't need to create any paper or so on. It's a phone call, 1 minute. And as we are in the platform engineering team, we are as nerd as they are. We want to try new stuff. We will go with you hand by hand. And if really is bringing a benefit for the organization, is our next standard tool. Okay? So it's basically about this. And last thing, metrics. So you remember the opening video? What did you see in the opening video? It was people, well, mainly women doing sports. So this is what we see in IT, in Adidas.
See my creativity. See my creativity.
Regarde-moi.
Chopin Chuangi. See my creativity.
Baddest thing you ever seen. I'm a front page magazine. I'm galactic, baby, I'm a star. It don't matter where you are, you should hurry.
So exactly. So who is playing now sports without the watch to improve or to gamify against one of his colleagues? Okay? No one. Who is now watching? Who imagines to watch a basketball game without the scoreboard there? It's impossible, right? So the same we need to apply for software. Okay, and this is one sentence that I picture myself. It's my most liked tweet ever, and it's not mine, so it's a bit. And it's from the great Kelsey Hightower, okay, the guru of Kubernetes. And it states that data is what we collect, becomes information when you analyze, and knowledge once you understand it, okay? And that's the key. And why are we talking about data? It's because it's our obsession, okay? As a sports brand, performance brands, we are heavily based on data, okay? Data for our growth, trends, also sales, NPS, consumer NPS, and also employee NPS. Okay, we are measuring everything as a company. And also I was here, I had the pleasure to be here last year, and also attending the workshop of metrics with Jess Campbell and Nicole. And it was also some eye-opener for me because I was super aligned with this. Okay? So nowadays, no one believes that IT doesn't matter, like in the past. Okay? Even you see that this, right? All the unicorns are, in fact, software companies, not business companies. It's true, and if you read I think most of you have read the Accelerate, and it's clear that software delivery performance drives organization performance, and that we are here because we are not unicorns, but also we can do a lot of stuff, okay, around that. That's why we have our own tooling for metrics, okay? It's a system that we built already 2 years ago, and now it's getting traction because all the teams want to onboard them, and it's basically taking data from the APIs of our different systems, our code repository, our ticketing system, our quality system, our CI integration platform, and putting data together. Okay? This data is being used by the teams to improve themselves in the dailies in front of the detailed data, and now we want to roll it out to put some global metrics in the company, okay, and how IT is enabling business. That's our next thing with the platform, okay? And as a new team, what keeps us busy every day? The onboarding, as I said, we have created a concept to onboard all the engineers together and work with each other. Improving our platform. We are releasing our open source portal next month. And we are only focusing things that matter, okay? Mainly our e-com, our mobile app, and so on. And what's next? As I always tell, we don't know. Okay, we know that we are in a transformational team. Okay, yeah, they are rushing me a little bit. And this is what I always tell our people, okay? Make yourself redundant, and you will always have the next thing to do. Okay, and it's also our belief. If we don't exist next year as a team, we will have succeed as a company because we will not be needed, and the different teams with business, they will work in a proper way. And that's it, basically.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. What I love about the Adidas story is it really shows how this is a community that is learning from each other. By the way, what has been really interesting for me is watching how competitive Adidas and the Nike culture is. Nike will be speaking later this afternoon, and it's been super interesting to see how these two very competitive organizations interact. So with that, Jeff, concluding remarks.
All right. Mic up. There we go. All right. So we are at the cusp of a break until 11:15. Fuel up so you can power your way till lunchtime. At 11:15, we start with the breakout sessions. Those are happening around the corner over here. We also have the Ask the Speaker in Breakout E on the Riverview floor. That's directly upstairs. Don't forget to submit your questions in the Ask the Speaker Slack channel. We've already gotten some great questions so far. And then upvote the ones you want to hear answered. There are a lot of upvote party parrots spinning in there, so that's great too. We have lunch with the speakers. That space is limited to 200 people there. That will also be upstairs in the Riverview floor. And for those of you that aren't going with lunch with the speakers and are going to do it with the community here, if you end up using any of those lunch table discussion topics and talk about those, just post in the general channel and let me know that you're using those things and what you talked about. That would be fantastic. And then finally, don't miss the Lean Coffee session that's at 2:20 p.m. Again, that is also upstairs in Breakout E on the Riverview floor. Attendance is limited to 100 people on that one. And then we're all back together in this room at 4 p.m.
Thank you. See you at 4 p.m.
Ready, break.